Hi, I'm Rita Wilkins, also known as the Downsizing Designer. Today I want to talk to you about something really important. This is addressed a lot to my baby boomers, but certainly to others as well. It's about the hidden truth about downsizing and decluttering, why it feels so hard, and how to finally move forward. So no one told us that it would feel like this. Downsizing and decluttering sounds so simple on paper. You pack, you donate, you throw away, and you move on. But when you're standing in a room filled with a lifetime full of belongings, the books that you've read, the dishes that you served your family, Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners on, that furniture that once held your children's toys, you suddenly realize this isn't just about stuff. It's about your life, and it's about your memories and your identity. And that's why so many people, maybe even you, find themselves staring at things, being paralyzed and overwhelmed, and wondering if it's even possible to let it all go. So you're not alone, and honestly, I've been there too, so I understand those emotions. So why the traditional advice falls short? So if you've ever searched for help with downsizing, you see the typical advice, just get rid of what you haven't used in a year. If it doesn't spark joy, toss it, or only keep what you need. Now, on some level, all of this makes sense, and that's pretty easy, right? Except that it's really not. Because your heart doesn't work like a checklist. Telling someone to simply get rid of things ignores that deeply human experience behind all those belongings, the love, the loss, the history that's wrapped in each and every one of them. And if you struggle to let go, it's not because you're weak or you're disorganized, it's because you're human. So there's a hidden emotional weight with decluttering and downsizing. Every item carries a story. So it's that china that you used. It's not just plates. It's Thanksgiving dinners. It's family laughter around the kitchen table. It's family arguments even, and maybe candlelight dinners. The boxes of photos, they're not clutter. They're your legacy. And that rocking chair, that's the one that held your babies. So one woman I worked with told me that she couldn't part with her dining room set because her children had moved away. They started their families of their own. But that table represented decades of birthday parties, milestone celebrations, and Sunday dinners. Letting it go felt like letting go of her role as mom or as family hostess. So this is part of the emotional weight that our stuff carries, and it's heavier than just any old box. And then there's the fear factor. Fear often hides in the background of decluttering. It's fear of that unknown future. It's fear of losing a piece of yourself. And it's fear of making a mistake. What if I need this someday? What if I regret giving it away? So one of my clients confessed that she kept stacks of old business files just in case. She had been retired for many years, but letting go of that felt like cutting off a piece of her identity. What she didn't realize was that the papers weren't part of her career. She had already had her career. She developed the relationships, she contributed, and she made an impact. The files were just paper. So when we recognize that fear is at the root of all of this, we can then start to see it and soften it a little bit. Then there's the guilt trap. So guilt is often another powerful trap that we fall into. We might recognize it in the thoughts similar to this. This belonged to my parents. I can't possibly give it away. Or my kids might want it someday. Or I spent good money on this, so I should keep it. So one man held on to his father's tools for many years, and that was after his dad had passed. He never used them, but he felt like he would be dishonoring his father if he let them go. But the real turning point came when he donated them to a local trade school where they would be used daily, and that guilt then turned into gratitude. So when we shift from holding on to guilt to passing along value, letting go actually feels less like a betrayal and more like a legacy. Then there's the overwhelm paralysis. Now, we've all had this at some point or other. That's when it's just the sheer volume of things that's overwhelming, and we get paralyzed. So those decades of accumulation, and even though it can make it feel like it's even impossible to start the decluttering process. So when you're walking through that attic, one client, as an example, said she hadn't been there in 10 years, and she said, I just closed the door. and because it's just too much to even think about. So the overwhelm often creates avoidance, and then avoidance can often create shame. But here's the truth. No one accumulates a house full of stuff overnight, so no one's going to clear it overnight either. So small steps matter. Even sorting one drawer can build momentum. So why does downsizing and decluttering feel like you're losing control? For many, unfortunately, downsizing isn't a choice. It's actually a necessity. Whether it's health issues, finances, or even family pressure can force that decision. And when adult children start telling their parents what they should keep, what they should do, it can feel like you're losing control over your own life. And that loss of autonomy hurts more than even letting go of the belongings themselves, which is why whenever possible, it's important to approach downsizing as your choice, your decision, because it's your future. So I often remind people that this is not about giving up. It's about taking charge, taking control. So reframing that process from loss to freedom is one of the things that will change everything. So if we looked at downsizing not as losing, but as curating, so curating the home, the life, the experiences that you want to carry forward. So one woman told me that after she downsized, she felt like she had been set free. She traded 3 cluttered bedrooms and endless maintenance for one cozy living room filled with just her favorite things. So she said, I feel so much lighter and I can actually breathe again. So that's the hidden gift of this entire process. Living with less can actually mean living more. Then there's the gentle first steps that you can take to ease that pain. So you don't need to start with the hardest items. In fact, you probably shouldn't. Start with duplicates. Start with items that you don't use, and try a separation box, one that you pack items away for a couple of months and see if you miss them. If you don't, you've probably got your answer. So my decluttering by heart method, which you can look up on my website, or I'll tell you what, we'll link it below, teaches that letting go isn't about rules. It's about listening to your heart, honoring your past, and also choosing your future. So there's definitely a role of support and community because you weren't meant to do this alone. Support makes all the difference, whether it's a trusted friend who can remind you of your goals, or a family member who respects your choices, or even a professional downsizing consultant. They can help you through the entire process. One client told me that she only started to make progress when she invited her granddaughter over, which I think is so dear. And together they laughed, they shared stories, they created memories together, and then they got quite a bit of it done. That's when she said, all that heaviness started to feel more joyful. So sometimes what we need most is simply someone to hold our hand and to walk beside us in this process. So there is hope and there are new possibilities. So here's what I want you to know, that downsizing is not an ending, it's actually an opening, it's a beginning. On the other side of that clutter is freedom, more space, less stress, and new possibilities. I've seen people discover hobbies they've been putting off for years. They had even forgotten about wanting to do them. They started traveling. They built stronger relationships. They built new relationships. And finally, they started to enjoy that white space on their calendar once in a while. And so living with less is not about deprivation. It's actually about liberation. It's about writing your next chapter with more clarity, more purpose, and more joy. So what I want you to know is that you're not alone. If you've been silently struggling, now you know the truth. It's not just you. Downsizing and decluttering, they're hard because they're so deeply human. But you don't have to fool yourself any longer. You don't have to hide. The writing is on the wall. Our big homes and our overflowing closets, they're not going to serve us forever. And the good news is you don't have to wait for a crisis to take control. You can begin today with one drawer, one memory, one decision at a time. And what you're going to find on the other side isn't emptiness. It's going to be freedom. It's that lightness. It's that space for what really matters. And because living with less allows you to experience so much more. I hope this helps.